Are you wearing double denim today?
No, it's a good old polo shirt. Where's my Empress t-shirt?
I know. I got to get you there. We got to get some merch out. Another big week. What do you want to talk about? Why don't you kick off?
How about I show you something cool. Example of Claude computer use that I really like. So check this guy. The prompt. Hey Claude, search the web for the latest architectural styles. Generate 2 inspired images with Everart AI. Then combine everything to create a beautiful website for an architectural firm. In this folder in my computer. So we're now entering the part of the game where you give abstract instructions to a large language model. Look, it generates those images inspired by the architectural pictures it found on the web. So these are not pictures it found on the web, it generated them. And now it continued to build an actual website. Check this out. It starts writing code and it's able to save those files into your computer. Whenever it needs access to a resource in your computer, a new resource like file system or network, it asks for permission. And there it is. That's your new website. Check this out. Tell me what you think.
It's crazy. It's pretty good.
It's nice, right?
Look, I think the thing with this computer use is, I was talking about this yesterday actually with one of our new investors, and when they sort of first showed the use of this, they gave us this, copy this thing from a CRM and paste it into here and do this, and I went, oh, that's cool, that's very useful. And then the subsequent 2 weeks since that's been released, what we're starting to see is use cases of. I think last time we talked about watching a video on a construction site. Now we're seeing, you're showing me create a website through, looking at these things. And we're moving into another phase. And I think this is probably, a good segue into some of the things that I wanted to talk about as well. But I think 2025 will be the year of agents. We're going to see this. We've talked about it a fair bit, but this agentic workflow. So what you just showed me is, really, you've got a little helper who's your agent, who might be your little designer agent, and people are going to build some of these, or you'll create them that way. And I think that's what's really going to be a new way to work, and it's going to be even more disruptive than the things we've seen, because you can start to build some. When we talk about organizations with lots of people, do you need lots of people if you can start to build these capabilities? Or do you need people who can work with these agents? And I think, to me, that's the future organizations are going to be like this. And there's 2 parts of the world right now, people that are getting this and starting to use it, and the rest that think this is down that way in the future. And I think this is coming pretty quick.
It's here now. So I want to show you one more thing. So, very timely, Mark Benioff, CEO of Salesforce, is also agreeing with you, and they're launching AgentForce. So he's writing, Clippy was a disaster and Copilot is a gimmick. AgentForce is the revolution. Do you think he wrote it, or do you think his mark is that a large language model was prompted to write it by his some aspiring content marketing executive somewhere in the organization?
Yeah.
Anyway, autonomous AI agents don't just assist, they act, reshape how we work. Basically, that example you just gave, where you ask the agent to follow up on a lead, or summarize all the leads and craft a message to get them back, or renew an account. All the things that you need pretty senior staff typically in your organizations, in theory now will become hyper productive using agents. That's just read the entire CRM of an organization and can act on that. And it actually speaks to what you showed us last week with Microsoft adding essentially new wizards to their, if you remember the word wizard and agent, that was actually quite related. In the olden days, wizards were just a sequence of small screens that you just step in each one to get a process. It's actually not that dissimilar to what they came up with in terms of agents. It's like a wizard, a software wizard. It's just that able to do much more.
100%. Everyone's on the bandwagon. I think this is what I'm saying. We and I think we're kind of moving on from AI washing to agent washing. That's where we're going to have this. What's really there. I'd love to maybe just share a report that I thought was really interesting. So it's by one of our US VCs, Menlo Ventures. They had this sort of annual report on enterprise AI. A great report, and I recommend you have a deep read really around the state of generative AI in the enterprise. And I keep having these discussions with both investors and corporates. I was with one of the a large, let's say one of Australia's large banks yesterday, with someone with them talking about the how slow the adoption has been for them in the AI space. And so there's this big concept of there's a lot of pilots, but how are we going to go from these pilots to production? And so we're starting to see some of that happen, where there's going to be real world applications now of generative AI. But really, the report that Menlo put out, giving a bit of a summary, I think there's some key sort of things that I took away from this report, and that is that this pilots to production, people are starting to really spend more in this, but also we're trying to go further ahead in what's going to be really deployed. And so one of the key things is that these budgets are going to change from being innovation to actually production budgets. And I think we know this is a thing when that money is not like we're just trying things, but so I think this is what's going to start to change next year particularly. And I thought that the report was a really great report just around what's sort of happening there. In reality, a lot of the spending right now in terms of category has been in those foundation models. Obviously, there's a lot of cost in that, and we can see that's why that's sort of dominating that foundation models, and not a lot of people can necessarily paying that. But we can see, this is now starting to, we talk a lot about, vertical AI, just how this is all going up. But you can see in each of these areas, there's a big year-on-year growth in each area, and it'd be interesting to see in a year's time how this will change. And I think this will start to stabilize in the foundation models and so forth. But really interesting around how we're sort of seeing that work, and we can't continue to spend the amount of money that is on those foundation models as well. But really interesting. So one of the other big things that I take away from here is that you're starting to see the generative AI use cases of you talked about the code, you just were sort of seeing that, and that sort of customer support and enterprise search and retrieval, that sort of agent workflows. So I think agents will be the new standard. And one of the big thing that came out of here as well was around so the different use cases. That's what they're sort of seeing with generative AI. Code generation is really taking off. We're seeing in that support side of things, and enterprise search as well. And so I think it's, like I say, we're starting to see those areas where there's use cases. I think it will come across to all these areas, but just right now that's where there's sort of progress happening from year on year in terms of things. I mean, to me, one of the there's a big thing highlighted here around talent, fight for the right talent, having the right people, having even within organizations, if you're not techie, is being able to understand what we're talking about here. Is I think that's where companies are going to really benefit, is people understanding how they can start to try these experiments and bring them into production. Big thing for me was talking about the fact that they believe that one of the things we've talked about in this first phase has been prompt engineering, and the approach to be able to talk to the machine and engineer some of these prompts. And we've seen quite a few startups that, when we look under the hood, what they're doing is building up a set of prompts, and then that's their product, building on LLM, lots of prompt. I think the interesting thing that they were talking about is talking about two ways that are going to change. Prompt engineering won't be a thing in the future. Talking about commercial organizations are using RAG and using their own data and using that with the models and really fine tuning that around being able to give something more useful for corporates. So I think that's one thing that they're saying, in terms of prompt engineering going away. And then also the agentic approach, meaning that this approach will override what has been working in the past. So I think, another thing that can be happening next year will be that prompt engineering, the thing that we've talked about, how do I talk to this machine, is going to be less important. What do you think about this shift away from prompt engineering to other approaches?
So Andre Karpathy, which is a senior kind of Silicon Valley character that's taught machine learning in Stanford, worked at OpenAI and Tesla, and is kind of famous for being a center of knowledge in that space. and he wrote a little essay or a few tweets about English is the new programming language. And if you think about it, what is a prompt engineering? It's a programming. It's a programming for a computer that is understanding AI. So you can give it a recipe, you can give it instructions. These days you can define agents and how they interact, but you do it with English language, whereas up until 2-3 years ago, you have to do it with Java or Python or who the fuck knows what kind of language. So when you say prompt engineers are going away, I'm hearing, well, people are less interested in writing the actual program and algorithm and want a tool that does it for them. And that makes perfect sense. And that's exactly the same pattern every computer platform and every wave in technology has been through, right? So we invent computers, and the first thing we can do is just have an interface to program them. And then, okay, how many people can program them? Very few. And then those people build apps on top that instead of prompting, you can drag and drop or click or type something and so forth. And that's basically the same pattern that we see over and over again. So if you ask me if I expect prompt engineers to go away, kind of in the same way I expect coding to go away. Like a lot of people are still coding, but most users of computers don't code. So a lot of people build prompt engineers, they will use large language models, but but the end user doesn't need necessarily to code, okay? But the beautiful is that there's much more many people who can speak English or actually any human language than that they can, speak Java or Python. What do you think?
Uh, I guess the question I was asking though was around, can we build businesses that are built just on prompts? That's probably more my question. I agree we're going to need to talk, but is the approach, is where we're going, that going to be something that we would invest in business? Or should you be building a business which is just got a whole range of prompts at the back end? Is that a business?
Say it again. If a software that just simplify your prompt,
Just has a few prompts. You know how to ask some questions. You put that together, and you have an offering, which is essentially taking someone's information.
if it's nothing else, it's just too easy to compete with. So it could be a business, and some of them will be big businesses, but most of them will be competed out.
So it's useful. It's useful. I'm not saying it's not useful. That's so. All I'm saying is one of the things I took out of the report was that we are moving away from just that pure prompt engineering as a way of developing a solution and moving more towards this agentic and RAG approach. The other thing, what do you think? I was quite excited by one thing that came out of this report, and that was really around the fact that the a lot of people aren't always happy with the incumbents, and so some of the data they had in there that 40% of people that were surveyed within this as well around corporates when question whether their current solutions meet their needs. And so what I like about this, it's showing that there's an opportunity for smaller startups now as well to start to build something niche, something useful. And I really hope that corporates are going to start to take on some of those things. I know there's a hesitation to work with startups, particularly early stage startups, but I really hope that in this next phase of growth, that this will be a time for a lot of those smaller startups to get their opportunity to really show, what they can do in the corporate space. What's your sort of thought on that? I mean, there's some really, interesting things on what departments as well are spending money. But yeah, what's your thoughts?
There's this themes that people like to write about and report about, which is the rate of adoption of technology in big enterprises. That's a lovely subject for very smart people to write long reports about and make lots of charts. And I just think it's obviously gonna be adopted in a massive way, and it's definitely a question of when, not if. And probably the answer to when is faster than you expect. And these things are not linear. They're like COVID days when everything was exponentially, and the whole world needs to learn how to think in exponential terms, and humans are not good in exponential terms. So they track this, and in the first 2 years, there's very little adoption. And I think in the next few years, there's going to be a lot of adoption. And the reason is that these things are coming, and they're everywhere they're going. And I think if there's anyone out there that thinks AI is not going to catch, it's fine. It's fine that they're out there. It's a way to make money to bet against them in the stock market, basically. So I'm happy that some people have a different opinion about that. The other things that people talk about is like, does AI favor the incumbents or it favors the challengers? And then like in what percent distribution? So it's one of these dynamic questions. At the beginning, maybe it looks like it's favored the incumbents, and then it looks like it's favored the challengers, and now it's oscillating. And Eric Schmidt, our friend, we quote the other day, a few months ago in our show, he talks about our every 6 months he's changed his opinion about, is it going to be the open models versus the closed models going to win? And the thing that changes is in fact the underlying technology and that these things run on. And that's the beauty of a dynamic market that is being disrupted. So I think that my opinion is that obviously there's going to be a massive adoptions of these technologies, massive opportunity, and it's happening sooner than people expect. It's not going to happen in a day, and it's going to be non-linear for sure. And I think in terms of what amount of the new value that's created is going to go into the incumbents, a big amount. The incumbents are going to get bigger, and there's going to be new challengers going to take over and eat someone's someone's lunch. And maybe Microsoft will survive. Microsoft survived the internet. They were so big they managed to survive the internet. So if all you talk about is Microsoft and Google, then that you're gonna those guys are so big they may survive anything. They can literally live like 20 years with no income and still survive as a business.
So one thing I'd love to just share quickly, one thing out of the report as well that I thought was quite interesting, is to look at how things are changing in the last year. And I'm excited by this a little bit. But if you start to look at what's happened, is there's a bit of a shift away from OpenAI and companies like Anthropic, which I'm really happy about being one of our investments, has taken a bit more market share. So you can see, OpenAI year-on-year share is going down, and Anthropic, but obviously they were a big part of the market before. But it's interesting to see that people are starting to adopt those other tools as well, Anthropic and Google, and so this is changing. It's so exciting to see, but it's also there's a market across not just one company. That I think there will be some new blood on the block, new players on the block. I think, particularly in this area. But where we see the biggest growth is going to be still at that application layer, not at the language model layer necessarily. I think, and particularly in Australia, we've talked about this a lot. That's where I really feel there's going to be some great companies that are coming out of Australia. That's where our general focus is. But yeah, so I recommend go and have a look at the report.
Let me show you something there from a talk. This guy's giving a talk in some conference in Israel about the future of AI. The title of the talk is "Aliens Are Coming," and he just shares a funny set of videos that I thought you should check it out. So here's robotics world champion since 2015.
2015, so that's like 10 years ago almost, right?
Yeah, and this is 2020, 21.
I remember seeing that.
2021. Check that out. Look at this, running on a narrow beam.
The old backflips.
And they flip. Yeah, you're right. You remember that? Can you do that? And this is 2024. It's called fine motor skills. It's like it's a learning objective of year K. So the title of this show is "The Aliens Are Coming," and they are working for free. What's the future going to look like? How does the little video make you feel?
Look, we're doing this already, where we're augmenting things. If we think about how we think, we've talked about how we think, right? And we're using these tools to think differently. We use our phones a lot, right? That's kind of been augmented for a while. You're Googling. We're just moving up a few notches, right? So we talked about how we think and we use it. I think this is where the interesting thing comes. Now we're able to do things in that the robotics with the AI is like, what can we, it's going to be another level of ability to do and create and destroy. I think this is where, where the future wars are going to be very different. We're already seeing that with the drones. That's how wars are being fought. These devices are going to be throughout everything, right? And so I feel if it's done responsibly and it can improve the quality of our lives, great. But if we sit around and our health is worse because we don't have to do anything, I kind of feel a little bit torn that I think we're going to crave there's two things that are happening. My thesis is two things happening. We're gonna be more and more digitally using some of these tools, but as humans, we're gonna more and more crave almost in-person connections with real people. So this is gonna create two streams of things, and we're gonna, as humans, need both. That's my view, and we're gonna value like personal relationships more, real, touch and feel with people. So if this stuff can help with that, cool. If it can help us build stuff, cool. But it's going to be it's going to be really interesting. The other one that I think we should try and bring up. So this little robot went and disrupted all these other robots and led them on a out of a room. They basically took this robot came in, told all the other robots, "Hey, you guys are being exploited," and took all the other robots away. And it talked to them and got them to follow it out of the showroom. So they all start to follow this robot out of the building. So, when you talk about where are we going, this is kind of pretty freaky for most people. It caused a bit of a uproar, but yeah, I mean, who knows where we're going to end up with this stuff?
If you have a robot that you can instruct with voice, how hard is it now to come up with another robot that fools them to do something? It's technically trivial. It's science fiction up until a few years ago, and now it's literally technically trivial. And of course, we didn't talk about it, but previously when we talked about computer use, how hard is it to set up, 10,000 virtual machines out there, to each one of them run code and get them to be bots, and to not just to do post stuff on Twitter, but to make transactions, buy things, sell things, to become virtual virtual humans, and then impact the real world and the real economy. And I think regulation is coming. I think there's gonna be some disaster that's related to that. That's gonna be, people are gonna wake up to, and we have to react to. On a bit of a lighter note, an LLM that doesn't know that there are 3 R's in strawberry. So because of the way they work, LLMs don't actually use letters. They tokenize letters. So it's pretty complicated for an LLM to count how many R's in the word strawberry it appears. So, it can we can have an army of robots like Terminator that can lead each other, fight, and do misinformation campaigns, and but can't spell strawberry. It's going to be an interesting future.
Oh, so I think this is what I'm starting to conclude, and I don't think we can explain it ourselves like we do with our brains. And I'm not saying so I think even with the computer use, I don't know if you saw there was the computer use. What it did was it browsed and it looked for certain things, doing a particular task. In the middle of it, it went off and it started just browsing the internet like we would do to go off, and it was browsing, in one of the videos around looking at a forest. And you go, how do you explain this? Why would it just go off and do this thing? But it's a little bit like we do with our brains. We go off on a tangent sometimes.
Get distracted, yeah.
And even that, it's like sometimes my spelling's a bit like that. I'm like, how do I spell? I kind of have these most basic things where I forget how to spell a particular word. And I kind of have those weird dialogues myself, even though I do know how to spell it. It's kind of funny, but also scary. And it's interesting. I think we need to understand how to use this in the right ways. I think we covered off a lot today, Dror, but I think that's another week in AI. Thanks everyone for joining us. Once again, if you like, share these videos, subscribe, give us some feedback when you see us, or talk to us, tell us what you want us to talk about, and we'd love to do that. But it's another week in AI. See you next week, Dror.
Bye-bye.